Hey guys, welcome to Heads of Estate. Now, as you can see, we are in the midst of a huge renovation project, which means we're going to be doing up the kitchen, modernizing it, making it look spick and span. We're going to be changing the flooring, and we're even thinking about changing the windows as well. But in today's episode, I'm going to be showing you guys how I'm going to modernize these old wooden stained timber frames around my beautiful windows, because it needs to be in keeping with our luxurious kitchen that we're going to have done installed very soon. So I'm going to be taking you through how I change the window frames, how I do it step by step, and to get that beautiful glossy look. So first things first, we're going to be taking down the blinds. Now this is a rather large blind, and essentially what you need to do for any blinds is just unlock them on the non-pulling side. And once you've unlocked it, you can then jam it out. So just move it to the right, and then hopefully it should just come out of place. So wish me luck. This is a rather large blind, but we'll see how we go. There we have it. A blind has been removed. If I can do it, you guys can do it too. Next up, I've got my screwdriver, because we need to take down all of the trims that are not going to be painted over. For example, the blind hinges, we definitely do not want to be painting over those. So let's go from this side. Definitely always worthwhile keeping hold of your screws and your hinges, just in case you need to reapply them later on or sell them. So when it comes to removing these kind of shutters that you have on your window, such as this one, there's a particular way you want to do this. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the shutter is all the way up to the top, and then you want to remove the cover, which is otherwise known as the valance. And usually that's just a clip-on, or in this case some Velcro. Like so, and pop that over to one side. And then you want to get a flathead screwdriver and just pick out the endings like so, and lift them up. And now that's done, you should be able to slide out your shutters from the windowsill. And then to easily put them back in again once you're done, you want to do the reverse of that, so slide them back in, pop down the latches and reattach to your valance. But there you have it. I gotta say, these are filthy. I don't think I want to be putting these back in a hurry whatsoever. Just take a look at the dirt and the grime that is collected. Yeah, Mr. Jackson, you are a dirty person. Now it's time to remove those remaining screws to get rid of those brackets. Wow, I've got to say, the room already looks so much brighter, so much bigger. It's really starting to take shape, even though I've just removed the blinds. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. But I really can't wait to do the next step of this beautiful minor renovation of these window frames. So stay tuned and let's see what we get up to next. All right, now that we're back, it's time to prep up your surfaces with a little bit of sanding paper. Now, for those of you out there who don't know much about sanding paper, it comes in different numbers. The lower the number, the more coarser it is, and so the more of a surface it takes off. For this particular area, because I'm going to be removing a timber wood finish, I really don't want to be going too coarse. I just want to be doing enough sanding so that my primer, when it attaches on, it sticks onto the surface really nicely. So I'm going to be using a sanding paper, which is 180. For the first initial part. Then I'm going to clean those areas really nice and thoroughly, and then after that we're going to be putting on our primer, and between our sand and between our coats of paint I'm going to be using a finer sanding paper, which is going to be 400 to 800 grit sanding paper, which will give it that nice smooth finish. So let's get going with some sanding, but before you do that, it's really important to make sure that you are adequately protected, because you don't really want to be smelling in those horrible fumes or those horrible dust particles. So make sure that you do have a nice P2 mask that's adequately fitted, and you've got some protective eyewear as well, which is what I'm wearing right now, and also keep your room ventilated and have a window open so that you don't breathe in those nastiness. You will note that I'm also using a sanding block. Now the reason I'm using this is because I'm going to be putting my sanding paper around like so. And that's really just to give me a bit of extra grip when I am sanding the area, because it's really hard sometimes just holding a piece of sanding paper by itself, but this method allows me to have a nice grip around my hand. So I'm going to start in a really methodical pattern so I don't lose track, because I'm going to have a lot of wood to be sanding down. So I'm going to start from the top, going from the outside to the inside, and then going from the top again and then round. So it might take a bit of work, but I promise you the results are so much better than if you were just to paint neat onto the timber alone. Importantly, if you are sanding down a wooden frame like myself and you do have already a grain there, make sure that you start sanding along with the grain. You don't want to be going anti the grain, you want to be going with the grain, because it's going to give you a much nicer finish at the end of the day. As you can see already from what we've done, just some light sanding, the gloss from the timber frame has actually now gone because we've sanded it away with our sanding block paper, which will be really nice because when we come to cleaning up the area, removing all the excess dirt, and then when we come to putting on our primer, it's just going to stick on really well, allowing us to do few coats of that beautiful satin gloss or that semi-gloss that I'm going to opt for with my white colour, and it's just going to look amazing. So just to show you how much I'm actually sanding off, I'm only going to be doing a light sand. So let's take a look at this surface now before and after sanding. So this is before over here, nice and shiny timber, and this is after sanding with 180 grit sandpaper, less shiny, got a more matte, dull finish, which is exactly what we want for priming our surface. If, like me, you've got a really weird shaped trim and you just can't get into those small corners, what I do is I break or I turn the sanding paper in half and I just feed it into the hole and just do a light sand to make sure that everything is absolutely covered. Alright, so now that all your surfaces have been sanded, they're now ready to be cleaned. And it is so important to clean your surfaces because, quite frankly, who wants to paint on dirty surfaces? No one. So for this part, I'm going to be using these lovely sugar soap wipes, which are going to be great for picking up any dirt or debris. And I'm going to go over it so many times to make sure that it is spotless when I run over my fingers. You'll also know that I'm going to be using some gloves and also my trusty mask as well. So let's get cleaning. Just look at all of that dirt that has come off. That is clearly the sand dust. So I'm really happy that it's in my wipe rather than on my surface because I don't want to be painting over this stuff. No way. What I like about these particular cleaning wipes is they have two types of surfaces. So the first surface that I'm using is a rough surface, which is good for kind of textured areas. So it really helps to lift off that paint. And the other, it really helps to lift off that sanding. It really helps to lift off that sand. And the other surface is a smooth surface, which I'm going to be using just to do any final finishing touches over. So it does help to pick up loads of dirt. Gives you an idea of how much sand dust you can actually collect with just one wipe. Yeah, gross. So now that we have sanded all of our surfaces and cleaned thoroughly, it is now time to do the first exciting bit of painting, which of course is priming your surfaces with some primer paint. Now, me personally, I am using this one, which is from British Paints, which is a Prep 4-in-1, which contains primer. Now there are different brands out there. You can get a paint and prime mixed in one, but I spoke to the Bunnings guy and he told me the paint and prime one mixed in one, you might need to do a few more extra coats because it's not 100% good coverage. So I'm going to go with this version and I'm going to see how it turns out. Once my primer dries, I'm then going to lightly sand it down and then apply my top coat. So for this I'm using one of the Monarch's paintbrushes, which is specifically designed for trims and doorways, and it's 75mm wide. And of course, whenever you open up a paint tin, make sure you stir it thoroughly. Wow, how exciting. Okay, so I've just got a piece of timber here, which is 1 by 1 piece of timber, and I'm going to stir it like so. Make sure I get the bottom and the top all stirred in nicely. As always, make sure that you are protected. So I'm wearing some gloves, I'm wearing a P2 mask, and I've also opened up the windows for some air ventilation. And all I'm going to do is get my paintbrush ready and take a few strokes with my paintbrush. So for this, I'm not going to dip in my paintbrush all of the way. I'm going to try and just keep it up to about a third of the way of the paintbrush. I do also have a damp microfiber cloth just by my side, just in case I get anything on the surrounding areas. When you're painting over timber frames, always make sure that you paint with the grain, otherwise you're going to end up with a really messy job. Now for those areas which are quite tight next to the frames, you can do a technique called cutting in, which means you're using the side of your brush to get nice and closely, but not over the frames. If you want to, you can also use a good grade of painter's tape and then peel it off right at the end. Alright guys, so I have finished the first coat of primer. As you can see behind me, you can still see a little bit of the timber coming through, but we're going to be leaving this for 2 whole hours, or at least overnight, to cure and harden up, because the next step after that is to give it a very light sand, and then we're going to be putting on our first, yes that's right, our first top coat application. I'm so excited because I can just see this right now. I can see the white walls versus the white shiny gloss. It's gonna look amazing. And you can see over here as well, this gorgeous area is just really gonna brighten up the room. And you can already appreciate actually that it does look a bit brighter now that that darkness has gone away. But you know, you can still see it. It is coming through, but with a thick gloss or a semi-gloss we've been putting on, it's gonna look amazing. I even did the kitchen as well. I'll show you the kitchen, come around here. It does take a bit of effort. It took me 2 hours to do these windows all together. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 window panes. It took me 2 hours to do. I went around the whole of the edges. I went inside, outside. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, it looks a bit blotchy, it's okay. As long as it's evenly distributed over, you're gonna then use your top coat over the top, and it's just really gonna smooth it all out. But just make sure you don't have any drips, because that's the biggest thing. So you can see here that it's all nice and smooth. It's looking gorgeous, and I can't wait to do that first top coat, because I know from previous experiences that makes it look absolutely stunning. And this room is really just going to open up and brighten up and just look amazing. So make sure you leave it well ventilated overnight. Make sure you're not breathing those stinky fumes. And tomorrow I'm going to come in with revised energy. Now that the paint has dried from our primer, it's time to lightly sand down the primer, getting rid of any imperfections. And again, this is a very light sand. And for this, I'll be using a 400 grit sandpaper, which again is around my block, as you can see. And I'm just going to be helping to remove any excess debris. Once that's done, I'm going to give it a nice old clean. So let's get going. Now that the light sanding is done, it's time to clean up the areas with the sugar soap swipes that I'm using. Now that our sugar soap has dried and our area is looking nice and fresh and ready to go for our top coat, I'm going to be using a semi-gloss paint, because windows and trims do really well with semi-gloss paint. Now this is a water-based paint by British Paints, and it takes 2 coats for you to achieve your final layer. So I'm going to do 1 coat and it touch dries in 30 minutes. Then after I'm going to reapply my next coat in 2 hours. Really important when you do open up any tins that have been put into storage, that you need to give them a really good stir. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I've got my gloves, I've got my mask, and I'm ready to get going. So I'm going to start off with doing the larger areas first with my roller, and I'm going to keep my paintbrush handy for those intricate areas as well. and you really just want to give nice swooping motions. Now the nice thing about foam rollers is they really help to give you a nice finish. Nice smooth finish is what we're after. With those fine edges, you can always use your brush just to go close up to the frames. Just got a bit of paint on my brush and I'm just really giving it strokes up and down so that it can seep into those wood grains you can see over here. And then this area, this is what we call cutting in. So you grab a bit of this bit you can get on my. So basically what you want to do is come as close as you can to the frame without getting the frame. So I've now completed 1 coat of primer and 2 top coats with sanding in between. And I have just looked at my timber, and although it's looking much better, I'd say like 90% better, I can still see some of that deep, heavy timber stain coming through. Now, usually 2 top coats is more than adequate. However, given that I had such a dark surface underneath, it still looks like it could just do with 1 final top coat, and then I think I'll be super happy with my end result. So I've gone ahead, I've prepped up my surfaces, and I'm ready now for my hopefully 3rd and final top coat of my water-based enamel. So yeah, let's get going. Oh wow, these window frames are just looking so white and delicious. You know what? I think these blinds are just a bit too yellow, a bit too creamy. They don't really work for anymore, so I've got the perfect place for them.